Adobe, for a lot of people, isn't just a piece of software. It's been the industry standard for designers, editors, photographers, and animators. But lately, something strange has been happening. The same company that once dominated the creative industry is now facing federal lawsuits, massive backlash from its own users, and a stock price that's taken a serious hit. Adobe didn't become the industry standard just like that. Part of their dominance came from being early with tools that completely changed digital creativity. For example, Adobe Illustrator, which was released in 1987, revolutionized digital vector design. Adobe Premiere Pro and After Effects, which were released in 1991 and 1993 respectively, later became major tools for video production. Adobe also strengthened its dominance through a series of strategic acquisitions that quietly eliminated major competitors and expanded its ecosystem. In 1995, Adobe acquired Photoshop from the Knoll brothers, and it became a go-to app for image editing. Another big acquisition was Macromedia in 2005, bringing popular tools like Macromedia Flash and Macromedia Dreamweaver. For decades, Adobe's business model was actually pretty simple. You buy the software and you own it. These tools usually came bundled in something called Creative Suite, a package Adobe updated every few years. You paid once, installed the software on your computer, and that version was yours to use for as long as you wanted. Sure, upgrades cost money, but they were optional. If you were happy with your current version, you could simply keep using it. But in 2013, Adobe made a decision. Instead of selling software as a product, Adobe decided to turn it into a service. That year, the company introduced Adobe Creative Cloud. At first glance, Creative Cloud sounded like a great deal. Instead of paying hundreds of dollars upfront for each program, users could access the entire Adobe ecosystem for a monthly subscription fee. And to be fair, there were real advantages to this system. For example, updates became automatic, and cloud storage made it easier to sync files across devices. But there was one massive difference that completely changed the experience. You no longer owned the software. Now you were renting it. As long as you kept paying your monthly subscription, everything worked normally. But the moment you stopped paying, access to your tools, and sometimes even certain project features, could disappear. For some users, that shift felt uncomfortable, but from a business perspective, Adobe can now make more revenue from users paying every single month. Creative Cloud quickly became one of the most successful subscription platforms in the software industry. Revenue grew rapidly, and Adobe's business looked stronger than ever. But over time, many users started noticing something strange about how these subscriptions actually worked. Because while the pricing was presented as monthly, the most heavily promoted plan inside Creative Cloud was something called the annual plan paid monthly. And that small detail made a huge difference. On the surface, it looked like you were paying month to month, but in reality, you were committing to a 12-month contract, which meant if you decided to cancel after 14 days, you didn't just stop paying, you had to pay a penalty. Specifically, Adobe states that after 14 days, a cancellation fee of 50% of the remaining balance of the contract applies.
If I want to cancel my $15 per month plan, it costs me over $80 to cancel.
And I had to pay $14 cancellation fee? What? Really? Yeah, really.
For many users, this was the moment when the subscription model started to feel less like convenience and more like a trap. Suddenly, users started complaining on Twitter. One user wrote, $400 to cancel Adobe? That's 5 monthly payments, dude. What the heck? They need to be sued for this. Another tweet read, great, I have to pay to cancel my Adobe subscription, the most pathetic way to keep my subscription. In 2024, the complaints became loud enough that they caught the attention of the U.S. Federal Trade Commission. Working alongside the United States Department of Justice, they filed a federal lawsuit against Adobe over its annual paid monthly subscription without adequately disclosing that canceling the plan in the first year could cost hundreds of dollars. According to the FTC and the DOJ, Adobe uses deceptive subscription and cancellation practices referred to as dark patterns. The lawsuit alleged that Adobe pushed consumers towards the annual paid monthly subscription without adequately disclosing that canceling the plan in the first year could cost hundreds of dollars. Many users believed they were signing up for a flexible monthly plan when in reality they were committing to a full year. Adobe trapped customers into year-long subscriptions through hidden early termination fees and numerous cancellation hurdles, said Samuel Levin, director of the FTC's Bureau of Consumer Protection. The lawsuit also claimed that Adobe's cancellation processes are designed to make cancellation difficult for consumers. For Adobe, this was a major reputational blow, but the controversy was about to get even worse. In one of the filings made public, the FTC says an unnamed Adobe executive described hidden early termination fees as a bit like heroin for Adobe. Now that phrase alone immediately grabbed headlines because the implication was pretty serious. The comparison suggested that the early termination fee, the same fee customers faced when trying to cancel their subscription early, was incredibly effective at keeping users from leaving, even if they wanted to. In other words, the fee acted like a kind of powerful retention mechanism. After months of legal pressure and investigations, in March 2026, Adobe agreed to settle the case. The settlement came with a total value of $150 million, $75 million in civil penalties, and offer customers $75 million in free services to resolve allegations that the company's subscription practices violated the Restore Online Shoppers Confidence Act. While Adobe was dealing with lawsuits and growing criticism from creators, another group was quietly becoming concerned as well: investors. For years, investing in Adobe had looked like an incredibly safe bet for investors. Because of that, Adobe's stock performed extremely well for many years. Adobe Creative Cloud model improved the company's revenue as well as its valuation, and its stock price reached record all-time highs on November 19, 2021, with a closing price of $688. But in the years that followed, the stock began to slide. From its peak levels, Adobe's share price dropped significantly, falling more than 60% below its 2021 high. Now, it's important to understand something here. The drop wasn't happening because Adobe suddenly stopped making money. In fact, the company was still reporting billions of dollars in annual revenue, much of it coming from Creative Cloud subscriptions. So, if the company was still earning money, why is the stock declining? Because investors don't just evaluate companies based on how well they're performing today. They look at where the industry is heading and whether a company will still dominate 5 or 10 years from now. Since the boom of AI, Adobe's creative software is facing aggressive competition from established generative AI tools like Midjourney, OpenAI, Gemini, and Canva. These AIs have dramatically simplified creative tasks like generating images, designing graphics, or editing video, and the entire software ecosystem on which Adobe built its empire. And for many investors, this stiff competition is a threat. Also, investors worry that Adobe's pricing power may weaken over time due to subscription fatigue. For decades, Adobe faced little real competition. Its suite of software is the industry standard, but all of that started to change. There are now a lot of similar software programs that are more affordable and just as powerful as Adobe's. Take Affinity Photo and Affinity Designer, for example. These programs provided professional-grade photo editing and design capabilities at a one-time purchase price, eliminating the need for a recurring subscription. Then there's Figma, which changed the design game in a way few expected. Figma is a cloud-based design platform that exploded in popularity among UX and UI designers and product teams. Unlike traditional Adobe tools like Illustrator or Adobe XD, Figma was built for collaboration from day one. Teams could work on the same design files simultaneously and see real-time updates within the project. It turned design into a shared, cloud-native process, something Adobe had struggled to fully replicate for years. Adobe noticed this threat, and its response in 2022 was to acquire Figma for $20 billion, signaling that it recognized the platform as a serious competitor. So, when the acquisition was announced, the internet erupted. On Reddit, one user wrote, "Competition is good, buying out the competition is bad." Another designer bluntly said, "Of course it's going into CC. RIP Figma, I loved you." For many in the design community, the fear wasn't subtle. If Adobe controlled Figma, the future of modern design tools might suddenly look a lot like Creative Cloud subscriptions. But the backlash didn't just stay online. Regulators across the world started paying attention. In the UK, the Competition and Markets Authority warned that the proposed $20 billion acquisition of Figma could harm the UK's digital design sector. European regulators raised similar alarms and have informed Adobe of their preliminary view that its proposed acquisition of Figma may reduce competition in the global markets for the supply of interactive product design software and of other creative design software.
Welcome back. Adobe terminating its $20 billion merger with the design software maker Figma.
After 15 months of investigations and legal pressure, Adobe abandons $20 billion acquisition of Figma. As a result of the termination, Adobe will be required to pay Figma a reverse termination fee of $1 billion in cash. After decades of dominating the creative software world, Adobe now faces a perfect storm of challenges. The company that once defined creativity for millions of designers and creators around the globe is now struggling with federal lawsuits, subscription backlash, rising competitors, AI disruption, and user distrust. Each of these issues alone would be serious, but together they form a complex web that Adobe must navigate carefully or risk losing the dominance it has held for decades. If you enjoy the video, like and subscribe. Thank you.